class for the day. So what we're going to talk about today, at least to start, and then you know how it goes. Sometimes we end up branching off into other things. Is I want to share with you some verses concerning how the Quran encourages us to look at people, and also I think simultaneously gives us encouragement when people look down upon us. So it goes both ways. Alhamdulillah, you're quiet today. Yeah, we all have those days. Oh, you mean because yesterday you felt like uh, you derailed the class. You did not derail the class. I think that's why you just said you're quiet. That actually created a very, very good class that we had yesterday. So now I don't feel like you derailed the class at all. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. I figured it out. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about some verses that give us a perspective on how we should look at other people. But on the other side of that, so there's two sides of it, I think. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So there's two sides of it, I think. On the one side, it's going to tell us how to how we should be viewing people, the perspective that we should have, how we should not look down on people and underestimate people. But also on the other side of that, I think it gives us encouragement for when people underestimate us. So I think it goes both ways because sometimes in life we have the tendency to underestimate people or to look down upon people. Just as human beings, we do that sometimes, right? Because a person might be doing something that we can't fully grasp or understand why they would be doing that. That seems like something that you wouldn't want to be doing. So then we start to look down on that person. And vice versa. Wa alaikum salam. Some people will turn those same things upon us, those same ways of looking at people upon us, or because we're doing something in a particular way or not doing something that they feel that we should do, then they begin to look down on us. Wa alaikum salam. So there's two sides of these verses, I think. The one side is how we should be looking at people and how we should not look down upon people and underestimate people. And on the other side of that, it's going to tell us, I think, or give us some consolation. It's going to console us and comfort us for when we feel that we're experiencing that. So to start with, I want to start with this verse. This is in chapter 6, verse 52. So actually, this will be from 52 to 54. So 6:52 up to 54. These are some really beautiful verses. So yeah, for sure. That's a good way to sum it up. Negative judgment or belittling people. So 6:52 to 54. So he says here, وَلَا تَطْرُدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. He says, he starts the verse off by saying, and do not expel or kick out those who call upon their Lord, those who are calling upon their Lord, morning and evening, seeking or wanting his face, his wajh. Now we've talked about this word wajh in some past classes, but I just mentioned something really briefly. So what does it mean when we talk about the wajh of Allah, for example? In another verse he says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ, and to Allah belongs the east and the west. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So wherever you turn, there is the wajh of Allah. And they would translate it as there's the face of Allah. So what does that mean? Wherever you turn, there's the face of Allah. What is the face of Allah? So there could be a few different, obviously, possible explanations for that. But if you think about the word wajh and why it's even called, why our face, our physical face is called wajh, it's from the word muwajaha. Yeah, muwajaha, exactly. You hit it right on the head. Muwajaha means the direction you face. You're facing with something. You're facing something. Muwajaha. So it's called wajh, right? Because it's the tool that you use to face things, right? So that's one way to think about it. So your wajh indicates a direction. And that's why in the Qur'an, salam, for example, if you look at the story of Musa, right, when he went to Midian, so when he killed the person, and then someone came and told him that people were plotting on him. This is in Surah 28, Surah Al-Qasas. People were plotting, and he needed to leave, right? How does the Quran describe when he undertook his journey to to Midian? He said, فَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. When he tawajjaha tilqa Madyan. So this is, let me give you the verse actually, the exact verse. So this is 28, 22. وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. Okay, so how do they usually translate this? Like when he left for Madyan or something like that, I think they say. Let's see how he translates it. I think they say when he left for Madyan. Okay, so he actually literally translates it as when he turned his face towards Madyan. That's good. I like that. I wasn't expecting him to translate it literally. So yeah, no, that's good. Let's see what he translates it. 28:22. He translates it as then as he turned his face to Madyan. That's good. I like that. So the word in Arabic is tawajjaha. Tawajjaha. Right? He turned his face towards Madyan, or he took on effort to face towards Madyan. So meaning what? That was the direction he was determined on. You follow what I'm saying? So your wajh, your tawajjuh, is your direction that you face, the direction that you're determined to take. Just like Musa was determined to take the direction to Madyan. Okay. Another way we can understand the word wajh is from the story of Yusuf. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I think all of this is important to understand or to connect to this topic today. So I'll show you the verses again that we talked about in the story of Yusuf, which is chapter 12, and it's going to be verses 9 and 10. So chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. So chapter 12, verses 9 and 10, he says, the Qur'an is telling us, about the brothers of Yusuf and how they felt about what was going on with Yusuf and his brother. So they said, إِذْ قَالُوا لَيُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا مِنَّا وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ. Oh, إِنِّي وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ. Yeah, Ibrahim, that's a good point. That's another one. إِنِّي وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ. I directed my face. Right, exactly. So in the story of Yusuf, with the brothers of Yusuf, the way he relates the conversation is that they said, إِذْ قَالُوا, when they said, لَا يُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ, truly Yusuf and his brother, أَحَبُّ, are more beloved, إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا مِنَّا, are more beloved to our father than us. So the wording they used is what? More beloved. All right, follow me here. So he says, Yusuf and his brother are more beloved to our father than us. And then in the very next verse, right, when now they're going to start to plot to get rid. Yeah, exactly. Attention or focus, direction is all, basically it's all different words to describe the same basic thing, right? That attention and focus, that's what you're directing at, your direction. So look at how he said here in the story of Yusuf, he said, or they said, Yusuf and his brother are more beloved to our father than us. So they use the word ahabbu, right? Ahabbu. Follow me so far? They're more beloved. Now, when they're plotting in the next verse, in the very next verse, when they're plotting to get rid of Yusuf, look how they described it. This is really interesting. They said, "Uqtulu Yusufa awitrahuhu ardan yakhlu lakum wajhu abikum." They said, "Kill Yusuf or expel him to another land. Yakhlu lakum wajhu abikum." The face of your father would be solely for you. Yakhlu lakum. It would be emptied completely for you. Wajhu abikum. The face of your father. Now I want you to think about this wording really carefully. The verses are one right after the other. So in 12:8, what were they complaining about? What were they concerned about? They said Yusuf and his brother are more beloved. Ahabbu, right? are more beloved. And then in the very next verse, when they wanted to get rid of Yusuf, what did they say? They said, you will have the face of your father. Why didn't they say the love of your father? Because that's what they were concerned about, right? So they could have said, يَخْلُ لَكُمْ حُبُّ أَبِيكُمْ, for example, that you will have the love of your father, but they didn't. They said you will have the face of your father. But that makes a lot of sense. Exactly, you have his attention. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because whatever you are concerned about is what you pay attention to, right? So if you love something, you pay more attention to that. So if the love of Yusuf and his brother was making their father direct his face towards them, salam, meaning pay more attention, right? Pay more attention to them, Yusuf and his brother. They wanted to get rid of that so he would pay more attention to them. So that act of paying attention is called wajhu abikum. It's the face of your father. So from these couple examples, from Musa to wajjaha tilqa Madyan, he directed his face. The example that Ahmed gave us, inni wajjahtu wajhiya, about Ibrahim. Yeah, the attention economy, right? That I directed my face, and here the face of your father. It lends support to the idea of wajh. Okay, so wajh, I think that's the word you're talking about. So wajh means, oops, I'm sorry. Wajh it auto corrected it to wash. Wajh means face. Face. Wajh. Okay. So, but that's the word that we're saying is potentially also meaning direction or focus or attention. And I would even add, oh yeah, subhanAllah, yeah. But that's a good question, because even in that verse, why was it those specific things that were mentioned to be washed? There's a reason, right? Everything in the Qur'an is for a reason. So even if you want to say the washing itself is symbolic, it's supposed to make you think of, but that's what we mean by a symbol, right? Symbolic. Sometimes people don't like that word, but the word just means a symbol is something that stands for something else. So a word is a symbol, a letter is a symbol, right? Meaning it makes you think of other things. So perhaps the washing of the wajh that's mentioned in 5:6 is symbolically, like when you undertake that, it makes you think of the idea of cleansing your attention, cleansing what you are directing your attention to. So this word is actually a really deep word in the Quran. So why we're looking at that is because, let's go now back to 6, where we start at 652. So 652 is the next verse. Or it's the verse we started with. But we had to, yeah, for sure. We had to digress a little bit to talk about the word wajh. Because here, when we go back to this verse, he says, وَلَا تَطْرُدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. I'm sorry. I usually don't care about the comments, and Hannah mutes them. It's the way he finished it. It reminds me like a rock star. He's like, yeah, like bro thought he ate with that one. I'm so sorry. I know you don't even pay attention to that. It's just the way he ended it. If he wouldn't have said yeah at the end, I would have just let it go by, and Hannah would have muted it. But he was like, yeah. Sorry about that. Like, oh man, that caught me totally off guard, man. He was like, yeah. Oh man, he thought he was cooking with that one. Oh wow, I'm sorry. What was I saying? he thought he did too. He thought he ate, man. He thought he ate, but there was all kind of crumbs. He didn't even finish his meal. Oh man. Yeah. Oh man. I'm sorry. Did I just mess the class up? right, man. It's 6:52. Oh man, I think I got the giggles now. Okay, calm down. It's gonna be okay. Oh man. All right, 6:52. How I learned Arabic. Oh, I'm so sorry that you keep saying that same comment. I'm not acknowledging it. Now I'm silly. Now I'm about to start being silly. No, I'm not. I'm not making fun. It's actually a good question. I'm just being silly. Um, I'm a very it might seem like I'm really serious because we're always like talking about the Quran and what this word means, that word means. But I'm actually pretty silly, man. I like to play around a lot. Uh, how do you know English? um, no, if you go to my page, there's a video. It was pinned. I need to repin it. I unpinned it and pinned a different one, but I need to repin it because I'm gonna keep getting that question. So if you look on my page, there's a video where I explain it. That's the only reason I didn't acknowledge your comment. Is because most a lot of the people that have come to these classes regularly, we usually have them every day. I probably have answered that question a few times, and I don't want to keep boring them. So if you go to my page, it's not pinned right at this moment, but I will pin it again later. But you can find it. Actually, if you go to there's a playlist. If you go to the playlist, which is I think I called it Muslims in Prison or something like that, be a Muslim in prison, something to that effect. At the top of my page, there's like 4 or 5 playlists. If you scroll over, you'll find that one, and the video's in there. Yeah. All right, let's go back to the class. All right, 6:52. ولا تطرد الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه. And do not expel those who call upon their Lord morning and evening, seeking or intending his wajh, his face. So now that we studied the meaning of the word wajh, or at least some of it, and we find that it means like to direct your attention or your focus to something or your direction. So now that makes a lot of sense because what is the wajh of Allah? وَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, you can find the direction or the purpose of Allah, right? Because Allah has a direction and a purpose in the sense of like what he wants us to accomplish in life, in the world, in the universe. So what we're looking for is we're trying to find the wajh of Allah in everything. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, you can find the purpose of Allah. You don't have to be in a special place to find the purpose of Allah. You don't have to be in a certain building just to find the purpose of Allah. Yeah, of course, you can go to those different places. Nothing wrong with that. We're not saying don't, but don't think it's so restricted, the face of Allah, the direction of Allah, that don't think it's so restricted that you can only find Allah in certain circumstances or by looking in a certain way or by being around certain people. Anywhere you can find the purpose of Allah. You just have to look for Allah in that thing. So if it's material things, try to look for Allah in that thing. If it's connections with people, try to look for Allah in those connections. If it's a brother or a sister that for some reason you might not you might find irritating, you might not like, try to look for Allah in that person, right? So because anywhere you turn, if it's a situation that's annoying you, try to find Allah in that situation. Anywhere you turn, there is the purpose of Allah. Now, that's not always easy to do, obviously, right? Because we're human beings and we have weaknesses and stuff like that. That's why I think this verse is so beautiful when he says, وَلَا تَطْرُدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. He said, do not expel those who call upon their Lord morning and evening, seeking his wajh, seeking his wajh, seeking his purpose. See, I love that phrase because his purpose, his direction, he ties it with the word yuriduna. This is what they want. This is what they seek. That doesn't mean they always get it. That doesn't, exactly, it's active. You're actively seeking, you're trying. That doesn't mean you won't fall short. That's why at the beginning of the verse, he said, don't kick them out. وَلَا تَطْرُدِ الَّذِينَ. Even because we got a good laugh out of the one question. But even with people who do that, right? When Hannah handles that, she mutes them, right? She mutes them. She doesn't completely block them. So in other words, they still have the ability to listen, but they just can't like troll the group. So you're not kicking them out to the ability that they don't have the ability to listen, to the point that they don't have the ability to listen. So, and I don't even know if they're seeking that, but I'm just using that as an example, like how in the beginning of this verse he says, "Don't expel or push away or kick out those who are trying to seek His purpose, to seek His direction." Right? Right now we have an army of crosses. Right. So I think that's so beautiful because it's reminding us. Um, when we started this class, I said one of the main things we're going to be talking about is our viewpoint towards people, how we deal with people, and on the other side of that, something to console us and comfort us for when people underestimate us or look down upon us. So this is why we started with this verse, because this is so beautiful to tell us, don't expel people who are seeking His purpose. They're trying. They want it. This is what they want. They're actively seeking it, right? That doesn't mean they're going to always be perfect. That doesn't mean they're always going to live according to that purpose or that direction, but they're seeking it. They want it. This is their intention. And if we keep reading the verse, he says, yuriduna wajhahu, they're seeking His purpose. Then he says, ma alayka min hisabihim min shay. You have nothing to do with their account. There's nothing upon you with their account. So don't kick them out because you don't have anything to do with their account. There's nothing to do. You have nothing to do with their account, right? وَمَا مِنْ حِسَابِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. And they have nothing to do with your account. فَتَطْرُدَهُمْ فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Lest you expel them and you become one of the wrongdoers. So when you kick people out because you don't think they're the right type of Muslim, or you don't think they're a good enough Muslim, or that they aren't even Muslim, or they're not living up to certain things that you feel like a Muslim should do, whatever the case, whatever all of the myriad excuses that are given to exclude people, Allah tells us, do not kick people out that want and are seeking His purpose, even if they don't achieve it, but they're seeking it. And then He reminds us, you don't have anything to do with their account. Their account has nothing to do with you. And also, your account has nothing to do with them. Your account is your responsibility. Their account is their responsibility. You have nothing to do with each other. Then he said in the next verse, or then he said at the end, if you expel them, you would be one of the wrongdoers, right? Then in the next verse he says, وَكَذَلِكَ فَتَنَّا بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ. And likewise, or like this, remember we studied this word كَذَلِكَ, like that. That is ismul ishara lil ba'id. It's the noun that points to something far. That. But when we say كَذَلِكَ, the kaf is called kafu tashbih. It's the kaf or the ka sound that you use to make a comparison. Yeah, inshallah. That you use to make a comparison, right? So when you say ka dhalika, like that, meaning you're comparing whatever you're talking about in this verse to whatever happened in the previous verse. Wa kadhalika, like that, or sometimes they translate it as likewise, but meaning in this same way. Wa kadhalika fatanna ba'dahum bi ba'd. And likewise, we test some of them with others. Likewise, or like that, we test some of them with others. What does that mean, we test some of them with others? Well, he said like that. So like in the previous verse, right? And what was in the previous verse? Expelling or kicking people out and reminding us that we have nothing to do with their account and they have nothing to do with our account. And then he said, like that, it's like that we test some of you with others. So it's through our relationships with people and whether or not we're going to look down on other people because we don't feel like they're living up to the standard that they should. It's through that Allah tests us. Allah tests us by other people. So when we see other people, right, and for some reason we think we're better than them. We have that thought or that feeling, or we feel like they're not good enough, or they're not a good enough, whatever it might be. That's a way that Allah is testing us through association with people that we might think are inferior in some kind of way, and vice versa. Vice versa. It applies the other way too. That's why I said it's a consolation or something that consoles and comforts us too, because we can be a test for others who think that they're better than us, right? It can work both ways. Yeah. I'll never forget that one. I see the 65-4 thing. That's what it made me think of. For those that don't get that joke, that's because you might be just joining. But when I post the recording, inshallah, you'll see why. You'll see why I said that. So likewise we tested, alhamdulillah. Likewise we test some of them with others, liyaqulu, so that they might say, Aha'ula'i manna Allahu alayhim min baynina? Are these the ones that Allah bestowed his favor upon from amongst us? So we test some of you with others in order that they might say, are these the ones that Allah has favored from us? These guys? This guy? This sister? Who is she? Where's her hijab at? How is she getting up there and talking about anything? We're like, this sister right here? That's who you learning from? I actually had somebody comment that before. Something to that effect. Surah Al-Balad and Surah Al-Bayyin. Oh, those are good surahs. Yeah, inshallah. So that's a test, right? Because people think, how is it that this the one that Allah bestowed his favor upon? And then when you read the rest of this verse, he says, Alaysa Allahu bi'a'lama bish-shakirin? Does not Allah know best those who are grateful? So yeah, Allah bestows his favor. Yeah, exactly. Who are they to ask that question in the first place? That's how I take the end of that verse. Alaysa Allahu bi'a'lama bish-shakirin? Is it not Allah that knows who's grateful? You think you're the one that knows who's going to be grateful for what he gives? So the verse, Toba 31, that might be a different subject. But yeah, if you email me so I don't forget, and I'll try to look that up, inshallah. But I'll repeat the verse. He said, وَكَذَلِكَ فَتَنَّا بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ. And likewise we test some of them with others. لِيَقُولُوا أَهَؤُلَاءِ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ بَيْنِنَا, in order that they might say, are these the ones that Allah has bestowed his favor upon from amongst us? أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَعْلَمَ بِالشَّاكِرِينَ? Does not Allah know? Is he not the most knowing of those who are grateful? So he's the one that's most knowing who's going to be grateful for his blessings, even if it's someone you look at, not you personally, obviously, inshallah, none of us would do that, but I'm saying it in general. Like we might look at someone and might not understand why they deserve that. Or someone might look at us and feel the same way. But the ayat is telling us, is it not Allah that knows best who's going to be grateful? So Allah is the one that distributes this. So we don't have a right to, Walaikum Salam, we don't have a right to look down on others and feel that they don't deserve to be in certain positions, or they don't deserve to have certain blessings, or whatever the case might be, because Allah is the one that knows best who to give his blessings to. And then in the next verse, so these verses all go together. That's why I said from 52 to 54, 652 to 54. And then we're leading up to this verse, but I wanted to read all of that first because I really don't think that the true beauty of this verse that we're about to read now, which is 54, 654, I don't really think the true beauty of that comes out if you don't read the two verses before it. If you just read it in isolation, or it's quoted in isolation, and I've heard this quoted before in different contexts in isolation, and it's a beautiful verse in isolation. Also, peace and wellness. But I truly believe that if you read the two verses before it, the true deep meaning of this verse really comes out. So what does this verse say? This verse says, وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ كتب ربكم على نفسه الرحمة أنه من عمل منكم سوءا بجهالة ثم تاب من بعده وأصلح فأنه غفور رحيم. He says, and when there comes to you those who believe in our ayats, then say, Salamun alaykum. Now, I really don't think, in my very, 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 very like extremely humble opinion, that we would truly grasp the beauty of that verse if we don't think about it in the context of the two verses that came before it. So, what are the two verses that came before it? What are they telling us again? The first verse that we read, which is 52, was not about not expelling or kicking people out, and reminding us, salamun alaykum, right, and alaikum salam wa barakatuh, and reminding us that we have nothing to do with their account and they have nothing to do with our account. And then the next verse tells us this is how we get tested, by our relationships and associations with people, and making sure that we don't look down upon other people. That's how we get tested. And then finally in 54, that's when he tells us, and when there comes to you those who believe in our ayat, faqul salamun alaykum. Then say to them, salamun alaykum. So you see the beauty of that? Because the context is about not expelling people and looking down upon people and thinking that why is it these people that Allah has given his blessing to, right? And reminding us that we have nothing to do with their account. So that's the context. It's about not looking down upon people, right? Or not thinking people are less than. And then in that context, he tells us, when they come to you, when those who come to you believe in our ayat, then say, salamun alaikum. So that's interesting because usually we think about it the other way around, right? We usually think about it when we come to a person, we say to them as we're approaching. Like when people join in here, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just want to show you the how the verse is saying something a little bit different, right? So so usually like when people come in here, you're coming to the live, so you usually give salam to me or whoever else is in the live, right? So when we walk into a room, we usually give salam going into the room, right? So when we come, we usually give salam. But here, this verse is telling us something different. This verse is saying, when they come to you, وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَلَيْكُمْ سَلَامٌ. And when those come to you who believe in our ayat, then you say, salamun alaykum. See how it's different there? They're coming to you. Why is it different? Potentially, perhaps, Allah knows best, is, again, when you think of the context is about expelling people and kicking people out and thinking you're better than them, thinking they don't deserve to be there, thinking they don't deserve the blessings, all of those different things. So the advice continues to be to us as the reader to think about this. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Be welcoming of them. When they come to you, say salamun alaikum. Because what's the deeper meaning of salam? The deeper meaning of salam has to do with peace, wholeness, wellness, being free of any problems or difficulties or harms, right? As-salam, like what does Allah call himself? This is one of the best ways, I think, to understand the word salam. What does Allah call himself in Surah Al-Hashr, right? Al-Hashr. Or is it Mujadala? I think it's Hashr. Yeah, it's Hashr. He says, As-salamul mu'min. He puts those two together. As-salam, he calls himself that, right? Look at this. Let me just double check this verse. He says in Surah Al-Hashr, salam, he says, هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. He says, he is Allah, the one who there is no ilah except for him. Al-Malik al-Quddus, the king, the holy. As-Salam al-Mu'min. He is As-Salam. He is the completeness of As-Salam and Al-Mu'min. What does Al-Mu'min mean? Al-Mu'min a lot of times is translated as a believer, right? But the actual literal meaning of the word is to give security, from the word amin, security or trust. So Al-Mu'min is the one that makes you feel secure or gives security. Okay? So here Allah is As-Salamul Mu'min. So why put those two together? Right? Think of how beautiful that is, because we always see those two root words coupled. We see it, for example, in the idea of being Muslim, wa alaikum salam, and the idea of being mu'min. Even in some hadith, we saw the Prophet would say something like al-Muslimu man al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. The Muslim is the one who the other Muslims are salima. He used a version of the root word here. It's a really nice hadith. He uses the version of the root word from Muslim, which is sin lam mim. He said, Al Muslimu man salima. The Muslim is the one who salima al Muslimun. That all of the Muslimun salima min lisanihi wa yadihi. They are safe from, exactly. They are safe and at peace from his tongue and his hands. That's the Muslim. And he says, Al mu'min man aminahu nasu ala dima'ihim wa amwalihim. He says, the mu'min is the one who the other people trust him, because the word mu'min comes from the word trust. Al mu'minu man aminahu nasu. The mu'min, oh subhanAllah, thank you. The mu'min is the one who the other people trust him, aminahu, from man aminahu nasu bidima'ihim wa amwalihim, with their lives, their blood, meaning their lives and their wealth. So you see how I use the root words in that hadith to give you the meaning. Al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimun. Al-Mu'minu man aminahu nas. And also we see in Surah 4. So in Surah 4, in verse 94, Surah 4, verse 94, you see these words coupled together as well. Salam and mu'min. Okay? Salam and mu'min. And people think when they read this verse that this means mu'min as a believer. Personally, I don't feel like that, and Allah knows best, and I'm going to show you, I'll show you why, just from looking at the context. So we'll start with 494, because we want to understand, what we're trying to understand, or trying to deepen our understanding of, is when those who come to you, this verse, وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. When those come to you who believe in our ayat, then say, Salamun alaykum. So we're trying to understand the deeper meaning of salam. And we started with saying Allah couples together as-salamul mu'min. So now what I'm trying to show is how those words go together. Why couple those words together? As-salam al-mu'min. The entirety of peace, and al-mu'min, the giver of security. And so we looked in the hadith, and the hadith couples those words. Al-muslimu man salim al-muslimun. Al-mu'minu man aminahu nas. Right? Or uses those words, I should say, like according to the root words, that the Muslim is the one who the other Muslims feel safe. The mu'min is the one who people feel tranquil or feel trust with, right? So now 494, he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, إِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. When you go out in the path of Allah, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, then make sure and clarify. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ أَلْقَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامِ, and do not say to the one who throws to you as-salam, لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا, you are not a mu'min. تَبْتَغُونَ عَرَضَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, and by doing so you are seeking the properties of the life of this world. Now, usually when people read this verse, they think that throwing as-salam just means the traditional, greeting, like saying assalamu alaikum, and don't say to them lasta mu'minan. You are not a believer in the religious sense. But the reason I think that in this context it doesn't necessarily mean that is because if we go back a few verses, you can see these concepts being used, the idea of peace and the idea of security being used in the context of conflict. So it's in the same chapter, a few verses before. So when you go to verse 90, chapter 4, verse 90, he says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ إِلَىٰ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ, except for a group of people who between you and them is a covenant. أَوْ جَاءُوكُمْ حَسِرَتْ صُدُورُهُم, or they come to you restraining their chest, and يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ أَوْ يُقَاتِلُوا قَوْمَهُم, that restraining your chest from fighting you or from fighting their people. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَسَلَّطَهُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ فَلَقَاتَلُوكُمْ. And if Allah had willed, He would have given them mastery over you and they would have fought you. So listen to the context. It's about fighting and conflict. فَإِنِ اعْتَزَلُوكُمْ. So if they stay away from you, alhamdulillah, much love and respect to you too. If they stay away from you, فَلَمْ يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ, and they don't fight you, وَأَلْقَوْا, listen to the wording, وَأَلْقَوْا إِلَيْكُمْ السَّلَامَ, and they throw peace to you, فَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبِيلًا, then Allah has not made for you against them any way. Now the next verse, 91. See how I said, they don't fight you and they throw peace. Then he said in the next verse, سَتَجِدُونَ آخَرِينَ, you will find others, يُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يَأْمَنُوكُمْ وَيَأْمَنُوا قَوْمَهُمْ. They want to make you feel secure and make your people feel secure. See how those go together? You see how it goes together? Right? Because in verse 90, 490, he said, if they do not fight you and they throw peace. And in the very next verse, he said, you'll find others that want to make you feel secure. Al-amin. Right? And that's 90 and 91. Right? And then if you keep reading, he says, towards the end of the verse, I'm going to skip a sentence just to sum it up. فَإِن لَمْ يَعْتَزِلُوكُمْ وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ, if they do not stay away from you and throw to you peace. So you see how he keeps using this word, throw to you peace, 490 and 91. And so then when you get to 94, when he says, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, make certain and clarify, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ أَلْقَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ, and do not say to the one who throws to you peace. So if you read the context, the throwing of peace seems more to do with a conflict situation. Whether or not it's like literally by saying assalamu alaikum, that could be one way. But someone who is showing you submission, like they want to submit and have peace, and they don't want to continue fighting, right? Do not say to this person, lasta mu'minan. You are not a giver of security, right? You are not a giver of security. You are not a mu'min, because it's in the context of conflict and people not fighting and throwing peace to you. So in that case, the one who does that, the one who gives you peace or submission or doesn't fight you, would be called mu'min. Would be called mu'min. Alhamdulillah, thank you. I appreciate that. Right? It'd be called a mu'min. It'd be called a giver of security. Follow me? So, putting all that together, the reason I share all of that is because when in Surah Al-Hashr, when Allah puts these names together, when He couples the names together, we shouldn't underestimate the coupling, right? Yeah, a peacemaker maybe. Because look at the names again. Huwallahu ladhi la ilaha illahu. He is Allah. This is 59:23. He is Allah, the one who there is no ilah except for Him. Al-Malik al-Quddus. Al-Malik al-Quddus. He couples them. Al-Malik al-Quddus. And how can we say that these two go together, potentially? Is because if you look at Surah, I think it's Surah Al-Jum'ah, he says, it's the beginning of Surah Jum'ah, he says, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ الْمَلِكُ الْقُدُّوسِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. So you see how he says Al-Malik Al-Quddus. So you can see that these are coupled together. So Al-Malik is the king, Al-Quddus is roughly translated like the holy or the pure. So Al-Malik Al-Quddus, and that makes sense why you couple them, because the king of the world, how are the kings of the world described in the Qur'an? Look at Surah An-Naml, for example, when the woman who was ruling Saba said, إِنَّ الْمُلُوكَ إِذَا دَخَلُوا قَرْيَةً أَفْسَدُوهَا وَجَعَلُوا أَعِزَّةَ أَهْلِهَا أَذِلَّ وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ. She said, truly the kings, when they enter a town, أَفْسَدُوهَا, they spoiled it. When kings enter a town, they spoil it. And they make the most elevated people there the most lowly. They change the whole social order. So the kings of the world are described like this, right? But Allah is Al-Malik Al-Quddus, the holy king, the pure king. He doesn't have the motives and the agendas of the king of this world. And then if you keep reading, Al-Malik, and that's not necessarily saying every king of this world, right? But she said it like in general, that the kings, this is what they do. Al-Malik al-Quddus as-Salam al-Mu'min. So I just wanted to show the connection between Al-Malik and Al-Quddus to say that perhaps we could argue that these names here at the end of Surah Al-Hashr are paired together. So we should understand them together. Al-Malik Al-Quddus, As-Salam al-Mu'min. Because we saw in other places that these are connected, because he says, لا تقولوا لمن ألقى إليكم السلام لست مؤمنا. Don't say to the one that throws to you salam, you are not a mu'min. Right? So as-salam al-mu'min. Al-muhaymin al-aziz. So we want to think about what's the connection between al-muhaymin and al-aziz. Al-jabbar al-mutakabbir. So al-jabbar, the trying to think of a good translation. I know I can explain it from the Arabic word, but Jabbar, they say the compeller, but I don't know if that's the best translation. Al-Jabbar al-Mutakabbir, Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. Glory be to Allah above what they associate. Huwa Allahu al-Khaliqu al-Bari'u al-Musawwir. He is Allah, the creator, al-Bari'u, the originator, al-Musawwir, the shaper or the fashioner. So three names, the strongest, the opulent, yeah, that could be, yeah, three names that all relate to how he creates. Al-Khaliq, al-Bari, al-Musawwir. So I wanted to show you that, to show and to make the point that it seems like, and Allah knows best, that when we read these names here, they have connections between them. So why does Allah call himself As-Salamul Mu'min? And how could we learn about what salam means from that and from the other things that we talked about? So as-salam has something to do with peace and the absence of fighting or problems or conflict or anything like that. We saw that from Surah An-Nisa, where the one that doesn't fight you is called throwing to you as-salam, right? Peace and submission and not conflicting with you, right? And then we were told, and also in Surah An-Nisa, don't say to the one who throws to you as-salam, lasta mu'minan. Aha, he did a poll, huh? Lasta mu'minan. Don't say to that person that you are not a mu'min. You are not someone that is a giver of security, right? So you can see the relationship between those words, as-salam and al-mu'min, right? The one who is the epitome of peace, and al-mu'min, the one who is the giver of security, right? The one who makes you feel secure. So now, with all of that, because if someone is giving you as-salam, that means they're not conflicting with you, there's no problems, they don't want problems with you. So therefore, as a result of that, that person is mu'min towards you. They are giving you the feeling of security. So from these verses, I would argue, and Allah knows best, that the one who gives security or the idea of security comes from salam. When something is complete salam, like Allah's complete salam, that means he gives you security. You get security from the one who wishes you nothing but salam, doesn't wish conflict or fighting with you. So when we go back to Surah 6, so we go back to 654, I think it was. We go back to 654. Was it 54? Oh, I'm in the wrong surah. Because I'm like, that doesn't look like what it was supposed to be. So we go back to 654. And now let's read this with the rest of that in mind. So remember, the context of this verse is what? Again, is the two verses before it. Is expelling people, is not expelling people who are seeking his purpose, Allah's purpose or direction. Realizing that you don't have anything to do with their account, they don't have anything to do with your account. Realizing that This is how Allah tests us with each other, right? And then he tells us, وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا. See the connection again? وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا. Walaikum salam. When those come to you who do iman with our ayats. So you could say they believe in our ayats. That's one way to think about it. But potentially also we can say they give security by our ayats. فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. Then say salamun alaikum. So that makes a lot of sense if you think about the context and everything we studied. So when people come to you who believe in the ayat of Allah, this is what they're basing their security that they're offering you and themselves on, is the ayat of Allah. And they come to you. And even though they might not be the best, they might not have everything figured out, you might, yeah, potentially, I would think it would apply, and Allah knows best. But we could study that more, to be honest. But just the general idea, I think this verse is very beautiful in showing us the attitude that we're supposed to have when people come to us. It's not supposed to be an attitude of superiority, but rather of saying salamun alaikum. And the saying of salamun alaikum doesn't just necessarily have to be verbally. That's another point to this. Even though it's using the word qul to say doesn't, to make a qawl, to make a statement, doesn't always mean that you do so verbally. It could exist within you. It could be like self-talk. So in other words, like there's another verse that says, وَأَسَرُّوا الْقَوْلَ أَوْجَهَرُوا بِهِ. Keep your qawl secret, the statement, keep the statement secret, or share it publicly. أَسَرُّوا الْقَوْلَ أَوْجَهَرُوا بِهِ. Like you could do either one. So the qawl, the statement, is something that could exist internally, and it's something that you could share publicly. So when it says فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ, first and foremost, it's your attitude. Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll answer that in the last couple minutes because I just want to tie everything together. So from everything that we studied, perhaps what's being said here is when people come to you, give them a feeling of peace. Give them a feeling of security. Even if they might seem to be people that are struggling. They might not seem to be the best people, even though we don't really know who are the best people. Obviously, only Allah knows that. But on the surface, we don't see them as that for whatever reason. Develop the mindset of salamun alaikum, more than just saying it. If you want to say it too, that's another thing. But develop the mindset of salam, the complete feeling of peace and security that you give people when they come to you. Give them salam when they come to you. And there's actually a hadith too. I don't know if I remember it word for word exactly, but I think it's something to the effect of where, alhamdulillah, where he says, As-salamu ismun min asma'illahi wada'ahu fil ard. Something like that. Fa'afshuhu baynakum. He said, As-salam is a name of the names of Allah that he placed upon the earth. So spread it amongst you. So let's remember that today. As-salamul mu'min. Allah is as-salam. So in living that name in our lives, we want to become that. As-salam. Not, of course, we can't never be like Allah exactly, but we want to spread that quality of Allah amongst people. That's a divine quality. And just really quickly, to answer Hannah's question, why we say salamun alaikum with like the UN on the end, not the United Nations, the tanween, is because here the word salam is an indefinite noun. So I'll explain it really quickly, and I really have to get ready for work. But if my quick explanation isn't clear, email me or remind me tomorrow and we can discuss it. But really quickly, indefinite nouns most times will end with a UN sound, like an un or an an or an in, and that shows that they're indefinite. Roughly, you can think about that as almost like saying a. So when you say salamun, or if you say like baytun, it's like you're saying a house. So the un part kind of means a, but not really. That's just a way to think about it. It means it's indefinite. And the reason you don't hear it sometimes is because of two things, I think. For one, in everyday spoken Arabic, a lot of people leave this off because it's actually quite complex in the sense of like you have to know the grammar to know what is the right vowel to put on the end. So a lot of times people people will leave the last vowel off because of that in spoken Arabic. There's even a saying I remember somebody saying one time. I don't know if I remembered exactly. It was something like "sakin taslim," like make the word sukoon and you'll be safe. Like you don't know what vowel to put on the end, just make it sukoon. Just say salam alaikum. You don't have to think about what vowel to put on the end, because grammatically, the Arabic grammar is what determines what vowel you put on the end of the word. The vowel can change. This is a characteristic of the Arabic language. So the un sound is the last vowel on an indefinite noun most times. Um, and also when you stop on an Arabic word, so meaning like you stop and there's nothing after it, you leave the last vowel off. So those will probably be two main reasons why you don't hear stuff like that sometimes, is because in modern Arabic they tend to just leave it off. Modern or spoken Arabic or colloquial Arabic. Um, yeah, subhanAllah. Yeah, so I'm trying to think, make that word out. Mushkuran, mashkuran, mashkuran, maybe. Uh, so that's a brief explanation. It's because it's indefinite. Wa alaikum salam. But for a more detailed explanation, remind me if it's still not clear, and I will try to explain in more detail. And with that, my friends, inshallah, we're done for the day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You turn that off. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good one for sure. Wa alaikum salam for sure. Inshallah, I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time. And I will post both of these. Uh, I'll post the audio to Spotify and I'll post the video to YouTube so you can review, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Have a good day, everybody.